sharing often, recipes that have been handed down through generations and their families, it does really, it literally changes people's lives. I know that sounds kind of corny, but I do have women saying to me, this has changed my life.
Today on Dirty Linen, we are doing something a little bit tricky. We are speaking about Ballarat, but we are not talking to Ballarat. We are heading across the seas to New Zealand to talk to Shiree Pilkinton, who runs A Pot of Courage, a social enterprise in Ballarat. Shiree, welcome to Dirty Linen.
Thank you.
What finds you in New Zealand?
Oh, it's a bit of a story, but look, the short version is that my son and I came over in June. Unfortunately, a bit unexpectedly, my mum had gone into intensive care, and she sadly ended up passing away. And soon after that, due to COVID, all the flights shut down. So here we are, still thinking that we would be away for 18 days, and it's now 3 months, and we're still here.
Goodness me. Well, I mean, first of all, I'm really sorry about your mum. That must be obviously it's a really sad thing to happen. And then you're caught up in all these border stories that are such a feature of this COVID era.
Yeah, it is. It's really difficult, but I remain positive and see the silver lining in all of this. It means that I can have more time with my dad and friends and family, and I'm in my family home that has been our family home for 52 years, and it's surrounded, of course, by mum's stuff, but a lot of that stuff includes everything that's aligned with her passion for baking and cooking and sharing good food. So, there's lots of, even though I'm not in the cafe at the moment, I'm still very well connected to food and the pleasure of sharing it.
Yeah, well, I mean, as you say, that you are looking at the positive, and that's, shows remarkable character. I really, really admire that. I find it very moving. What's it like for your son? Has he got stuff here that he wishes he was doing?
Oh, yeah, pretty tricky. He's 13 and, not seeing his mates for 3 months and not seeing his dad and, just all the things that 13-year-olds would rather be doing than, kind of being a housemate with their mum and their grandfather for 3 months. But, and remote learning, all of that is quite a lot. But also I was just talking with a friend this morning about this, about adjusting to the way that I have been raised, and very strong part of my Maori culture. And, this has been a lot of new experiences for him, particularly around the time of the death of my mum, and the way that we do things is quite confronting, I guess, for someone of his age who hasn't grown up in this culture. So that's been, quite a challenge as well.
Oh, that's so interesting. So your family is Maori?
Yes, we have Maori on both sides of my family, and then also on Dad's family, Croatian. And so we, again, like being back here and having all that culture that I grew up with around me is a real reminder, actually, of how much we sacrifice when we live away from our culture and our families. And, reminds me every day of the challenges that the women who I work with, just live with every day as well, particularly when they can go, literally decades without seeing family, or may not ever see them again, and they kind of have to find a way to accept that.
Yeah, I mean, that does take us very neatly to A Pot of Courage and the project of your social enterprise that you run in Ballarat and launched just before COVID. Tell us more about it.
Yes, A Pot of Courage really came out of the success of a book that we launched in 2018, and that book was called It Takes Courage, Sharing Secret Recipes and Stories from Our Homelands. So it featured women from about 14 different cultures who now call Ballarat home. And we were successful in receiving funding when I was working at Women's Health Grampians. And with this funding, we could bring in a professional photographer to teach the women photography skills. We ran art classes so that the women could create their own borders at the bottom of their pages in the book. Had others coming in and working with the women to do creative writing, to share stories from their lived experiences as well. So that book actually was the real launch pad for what has now become our social enterprise, because when we launched the book in Ballarat, we thought, wouldn't it be great if there were, 50 people who came along and supported us? And there were about 130, and we had food there, of course, that was featured in the book. And people kept saying, wow, you guys, you need to open a restaurant, you need to run cooking classes. And it was right around that time that the women involved, I had them for a full day session every Thursday when I was working in the prevention of violence against women space. And at that time, they were talking about courage a lot, that it takes courage to navigate your way through, systems in our society, to leave your homeland and all that's familiar to you, to learn the public transport system. And, some days it takes courage simply to get out of bed. They talked a lot about how they had applied for so many jobs and just were not even getting an interview. And all they wanted was to be able to give back to their community and to kind of get ahead in some way. And it was really dragging a lot of them down. So kind of flippantly at that time, I said, you need to stop applying for jobs, because it's how many times can you be knocked down and be expected to get back up again? And create your own income. Look at what you can do that nobody else in this town can do. I come to I'm running these sessions with you every Thursday, and I say that I get to come to the best cafe in town every Thursday because I have this food laid out all over the table from all these pockets of the world, and it is absolutely delicious. And after we launched the book and we went through that conversation again, and up on the whiteboard, I just wrote 2 words in the middle of the board. I just put I can and then ... Tell me everything that you can do, all the skills that you have. And soon the whiteboard was full, ranging everything from, I can cook for a feast where 1,000 people have attended, or I can now drive a car. And I said, what, I think that we have enough ingredients here on the board to create a social enterprise that really showcases your skills and also shares your culture.
Wow. I mean, that's already such an inspiring story, just to flip around this rejection into ability and, all the skills that were sitting in that room. Mm-hmm. Just tell me about some of the women that are in that room.
Yeah. One of them who comes to mind straight away, a Vietnamese woman, and she had worked in hospitality in Vietnam, a great cook. She'd also specialised in cocktails, and she talked about that very first day that she arrived in Australia to live, and she's married to an Australian man, and the drive from Tullamarine out to Nil, way out west. And she said that when she was in the car going along, she was looking out the window thinking, what have I done? Where are all the people? And where are all the houses? And, and then she arrived in Nil and she was trying to be positive about her new home. Of course, didn't know anybody. English was fairly limited, her language skills. And she said, the next day I got up and I thought, okay, I'm going to go for a walk and just really take in my new home. And she said, it took me half an hour and I'd covered the whole town. and that sense of, she'd grown up in Ho Chi Minh, and she said, the streets were always busy and full, and everybody, stopped and talked to each other, and there were people in and out of your house, and you're sharing food with everybody. And suddenly it was just so lonely. long story short, she convinced her husband to move to Ballarat. She felt like she needed to be somewhere even a bit bigger than nil. And she joined our program. In those first few weeks, she really just sort of looked down at the table and said very little every session. And then she just started to really come out of her shell, and she started bringing food in for us to try, and she was so proud of what she put on the table every week. And, fast forward, here she is in our cafe that to begin with was just a 2-day-a-week pop-up cafe. And she's, absolutely just smiling from ear to ear each day that she would bring out her fresh tray of Vietnamese rice paper rolls and her dipping sauces, and people would be lining up for them. They were so good. And introducing banh mi to the menu, and again, people coming in and saying that they'd driven, quite a way just to come and get one of Jung's banh mi. So, so it's confidence building, it's sharing your culture, and most importantly, financial freedom.
Yeah, that's so fantastic. So what happened? You've got all the words on the whiteboard. You feel like you're going to be able to build something. What happened?
Yeah,
next?
And then I'm thinking, what have I done? Because it's not really my job. It's not part of my job at Women's Health Grampians as an intercultural engagement advisor to suddenly start up a cafe and catering business. But I've worked in hospitality in the past and love that environment, and just being in such a sort of dynamic, ever-changing space. And I really I said, well, I'll donate my time to get this up and running. And 2 years later, I'm still donating my time, but it's 3 years later actually. But you know what? I'm so passionate about it, and seeing the positive, really positive impact that it has made on people like Jung and others who were so isolated, sitting in their homes with the most incredible skills. And now they're out there either still working for us, or they've gone on to find other jobs, which is awesome, started their own little side businesses. And some of them have moved into different fields, but they're confident in doing that now.
And what kind of customers do you have? I mean, is it sort of people from within those intercultural communities, or is it, everybody in Ballarat? I mean, who is drawn to the cafe?
Yeah, it's really interesting because we're very fortunate that we are now based in a large building that is known as Berkeley Square in Ballarat. And it is managed by Ballarat Group Training. But under that roof, there are 19 organisations who, that's their base. And so, of course, we have, when COVID allows, we have, more than 100 people in the building every day who are working there. But the community has actually completely come on board and really they want to support what we do. When people know the story of what it is that I'm really trying to achieve, they just want to play a part in that success somehow. So, yeah, the Ballarat community has been incredible. Of course, there are a lot of our customer base are people who, maybe tend to be supportive of and embrace multiculturalism anyway, and also just want to help people to feel that they belong in Ballarat. So it's quite a mixture of people, but, yeah, we're certainly well supported.
And I mean, you've mentioned the sort of transformation that this project has had for people like Jung.
Jung, yes.
Jung,
That's
right. Sorry. What kinds of personal transformations are possible when someone's engaged to show their skills in this way?
Yeah, well, we see their true personalities come out when they are given these opportunities, when you can see that other people are, not just enjoying your food, but paying for it and enjoying it, and then telling others to come and try this dish that Jung or Rishna or somebody made. That's so confidence building, but also that sense of pride in who you are and your skills and in your culture, sharing often, recipes that have been handed down through generations in their families, it does really, it literally changes people's lives. I know that sounds kind of corny, but I do have women saying to me, this has changed my life. And I can only imagine what it would be like if you come to a new place and you don't have the language and you're not connecting with others, you're kind of looking at your four walls every day, and you're cooking all these amazing dishes in your home just for your immediate family to eat. And then suddenly someone says, hey, we could give you a bit more training and support and then paid hours to do what you love to do. And you will meet this other, this group of fabulous women who are in similar situations, and we will help you to be connected to other organisations and workplaces. It's kind of, it's gold, really, isn't it?
It's a bit of a wraparound magic, isn't it? It's such a fantastic formula. So how many different cultures are represented at A Pot of Courage?
At the moment, I was having a little bit of an add up this morning because even in these 3 months that I've been away, I know we've had a couple more additions to what we call the A Pot of Courage family. So Pakistani and Bangladeshi have been added to the mix in the last couple of months. So I think now we must be up to about 14, maybe, different cultures. That's, amongst our casual staff, and people do come and go. Sometimes there will be a baby added to the A Pot of Courage family and someone will time out for a while. But, overall, we've probably had probably close to 19 women through A Pot of Courage since late 2019. And, some of them are still involved, and we've had a lot of newbies come through as well.
Is there a dish or a banquet or one of the cuisines that you've really just fallen in love with and, that you can't do without now?
Look, I drool from over here in New Zealand when I see, our new menu going up as what happened a couple of weeks ago. And normally I would be, I would be taste testing. I'd be the quality assurance person at that end. So during lockdown last year, we had to be really innovative because we had only been in that cafe space for about 6 weeks before COVID hit. And I thought, oh no, how are we going to keep this going? So, the women came up with things like, okay, let's put together a Latin American banquet. Let's put together a Malaysian street food experience that people can order and have delivered at that time. So, I love our menu through and through. And I know it sounds really biased, but it's such good food and it's cooked with heart. It's really, you can see when the women are preparing the dishes that they're often thinking about, the grandmother or their mum or them up on a little stool at the kitchen bench in their younger years and learning all these things that they've now turned into an income. And it comes through in the food.
Yeah, it's so rich, isn't it? It doesn't need to be just one thing. So Shiree, COVID for a lot of people in Australia, it's been the biggest disruption to their lives. It's been, for some people, it's been the hardest thing that they've had to navigate. For a lot of people that have made Australia their home, they've been through lots of other types of dislocation and difficulty. What have you noticed from the women that you work with, just in terms of the way they're able to deal with the disruption of the pandemic, and their resilience around difficulties that we face?
Yeah, so resilient. Like, if we think that this is the worst thing that we have to deal with, I think it can be very grounding to be around a table having that discussion and hearing stories of, well, I've lived, not myself, but, others would say, I've lived through conflict. I've lived through famines. I've had to wait years and years and years on a waiting list to be given permission to leave a refugee camp. And sometimes after 10, 15 years, I finally got that note up on a notice board in a refugee camp that has my name on it that says that I'm out of there and I'm moving to Australia. So I feel like every day things are put into perspective. And I certainly have learned a lot over the years from working with the refugee and migrant communities in Ballarat. And a lot of that is just simply about, sometimes just take a good hard look at yourself. If you think this is the worst thing that's going on, no, you probably need to get out and see the world a bit more and meet people from more diverse backgrounds and lived experiences. It's grounding to do that.
So how does that manifest for some of these women that you see, just in terms of how they deal with the ups and downs of lockdowns? And, Ballarat's just been in a lockdown recently and only just back out. What is it? Do they just take everything? I don't want to generalize, but is there a tendency to take things in their stride? Are they able to be more optimistic? Like, what kinds of responses do you see?
Yeah, definitely optimism. Also, there's this, we really work together it's very important that we work together as a team, that we see, because it's a social enterprise, obviously, everything that we do is going to help us to remain open and to continue to provide opportunities for more women, more marginalised women. So there is that attitude of, okay, here's another little obstacle. Here's another sort of wall that's gone up in front of us, but let's put our heads together and work out with all the skills that we have, we can get through this, we can do it. And innovation kicks in big time. So, our head chef, Rishna, and our kitchen coordinator, Lily, are both very creative and not just in food preparation, but in everything that they do. And they will come up with these amazing plans that I just say, go for it. Like this is the time that we can have a go at taking a risk, doing something differently. And we do so far anyway, keep kind of bouncing back each time another wall goes up.
What kinds of things have they thought of?
Well, even just things like, last year when COVID first hit, okay, we can't have the doors open as a cafe, but we still have a kitchen. We still have cooks who need some work. We have women who are out of work in other employment who we could pay to deliver, literally drive around Ballarat delivering food. So, that's when the takeaway delivery menu kicked in last year. And not just, let's just, sell our regular dishes. Let's think about what would be a truly new taste experience for people receiving this food on their doorstep. So that's how things like a Latin American banquet was born, and the Malaysian street food experience. So always trying to think about what is our point of difference? What is it that makes us unique, and how can we really capitalise on that? They do that well, really well. And that's the kind of space that I love to be in, where people can think outside the square, and we see it as another blank canvas that we can fill and colour in the way that we do.
Love it. Shiree, you mentioned that you're there in your parents' or your family home with your mother's baking bits and pieces. I know that New Zealand baking culture is so strong. I've got a New Zealand baking Bible, and I know that there's so much love around a cake tin. What are some of the baked goods that your mum was known for and loved to make?
Yeah, Mum, there was always, a full biscuit tin in our house, and And we always were at the bench, with Mum learning. And all of us, well, I'm not sure about my brother, but the three of us girls, we definitely have continued to be bakers and cookers and sharers of food right through life. Mum would, honestly, I'm blown away by the amount of recipes that she has cut out of newspapers. She's written down that have appeared on TV. There's literally thousands upon thousands of recipes in this house. Like, as my dad said, you'd have to live to be about 180 years old to actually get through all of these. But it ranges everything from seafood dishes to, how to use the stewed apple that, with the apples from Granny's tree, or a lot of it is based on what's in season. And also Mum was a big preserver. So, how can we then incorporate all those jars that fill the shelves into our cooking and baking? But the other thing that has been awesome is just finding things like Mum was a collector of very beautiful objects. She should have had a shop, really. But so the silverware, that could be the cake servers, and she made cake stands out of, old plates that, like the triple layers of plates. Yeah, she's made that. I didn't even know she was doing that, but I've found those while I've been here, and many other things that she loved craft and she loved to bake. So, this house is full of creations and appliances that I didn't even know existed. Like, there's an appliance for everything and gadgets for everything. She had just, sadly, not long before she passed away, had bought this brand spanking new KitchenAid, stand mixer. So my sister's now, got that and taken it out of the box, and Mum did a lot of baking with her grandchildren. And so now my sister will keep that going with Mum's stand mixer and, keep the baking tradition alive and kicking for sure.
Wow. And I mean, tell me something from the Maori traditions in your family that I might not know.
Yes, well, I mean, of course, big occasions, because not even big occasions actually, but many special occasions. We would never go past a hangi. So do you know what I mean by hangi? Yeah. And
but perhaps explain it for people who don't know.
Yeah. So, well, in our family, how it would work is that and I know it sounds very kind of gender stereotyped, but the men would get up in the morning and they'd have a big pit dug in the ground, and they would get a fire going that would then heat the rocks, and so actually sometimes they would use like railway sleepers that would retain a lot of heat. When the fire dies down to the right level, they would drop a basket, like literally a big sort of wire basket, into that would be lined with like cabbage leaves and also wet cloth, that damp, I should say, cloth, because you're aiming to create that steaming, smoky cooking method and taste, flavour. The men would peel all the vegetables, no matter how many people were coming that day. They would do all of that. You could then, into the pit, you would put your vegetables, you'd put your meats. They all go in at the same time. And my nana even used to put steamed like plum puddings and like inside a like a, what do you call it? Like a gauze bag, linen kind of bag. I can't remember the right word, but anyway.
Yeah. Like muslin.
Yeah, that's right, muslin bag. And that would go, and then you basically seal it all up again with the damp cloths or old sheets and cabbage leaves, and you basically cover it again so all the earth goes on top, and depending on how much food is in there, it's hours later that it's then pulled up. And I mean, it's divine. It's healthy because it's a combination of steaming and smoking. And we always said that actually the next day was even better because those flavours were so strong throughout the food. And, we'd chop it all up and put it in the oven and reheat it. And it nearly kind of makes me salivate thinking about it, because I don't get to have that much in Australia, of course. That was a big part of our upbringing. But then also just things like the other day I bought a big bag of watercress. Now, really, as one of my cousins said, you could have just gone down the road to the drain and got it for free. But, for me, a massive big bag for $4 was absolutely a bargain. And, I've been living on that stuff for the last few days, and sandwiches and adding it to dishes, and I've added it everywhere in the last 4 days. Seafood is another thing, because obviously we're almost never far from the sea. And so over the last week, I think we've had 3 or 4 different people dropping off fresh snapper. I know, and it's just, and I've you get a bit spoiled, really, because, that stuff's, it's, I don't know, $40-something or whatever it is in Australia a kilo. And the fridge at the moment is, full of fresh fish. It's great.
Actually, where exactly in New Zealand are you?
So I grew up in the area that's called the Waikato. So Hamilton is the nearest city, and I grew up in a fairly small town of about 7,000 called Morrinsville. And just by the way, this is where Jacinda Ardern grew up as well. So so
everyone knows her?
Yeah. And her family obviously are pretty well known here. Jacinda was a good decade behind me, but she, the family I know. So it's a farming area, and we all around here seem to have massive, grow lemons like you wouldn't believe. There's the hugest lemons and juiciest lemons ever. And feijoa trees, of course. I don't know if you're familiar with feijoas, but in New Zealand,
But I've always said feijoa, so I've obviously been saying it wrong. Is that how a proper New Zealander says it?
Well, yeah, but I think they originate from South America, don't they? I think so. Maybe we've got it wrong. I don't know, but we've.
Well, I know they're massive in New Zealand, and there's some that grow on the street around us. So I've made crumbles with them and put them in cakes and stuff. So, they're a fantastic fruit.
Oh, that's so good for cakes and things, because, the moisture that they provide is amazing for cakes. So everyone, has these fruit trees, and my mum and dad are big-time gardeners, so we've grown up with that real appreciation of fresh produce, walking out the door and picking, our food for dinner that night, and fruit trees, and that's my upbringing, and that's how I still prefer to live.
Wow, Shiree. Well, I can feel that it's a really rich time for you, even though it hasn't worked out in any sense how you would have hoped. But you're obviously so connected to where you are right now. It'll be interesting. I want to know when you get back to Ballarat, I want to know how it all feels for you.
Yes. I think, in all honesty, that one of the things when I get back, what will help me feel like, I'm kind of not, well, I was going to say home again, but kind of second home again, will be when I get back into the cafe. I have my full-time job, but I'm elsewhere, but I'm hoping that soon we will find maybe like a philanthropic organisation or something like that who will be able to help invest in us, and then I can move from being, running this voluntarily to actually turning it into a paid role and just expand it to its full potential. But when I'm back there with the women and in that cafe, and with all my friends in Ballarat who support us so much, I know I will be happy to be back there as well.
Well, and this is probably the hardest question of all, but do you know when you can get back?
No, this is the $1 million question for sure. I mean, look, we've had lots of days in the last week in New Zealand where COVID case numbers have been between 8 per day and 20. So very, very low numbers, but it seems that for some reason we're still classed here as a red zone for COVID. And so until it's sort of reclassified, there are no flights running unless you can charter your own plane. You just have to stay put and wait.
Goodness me. Well, I'll be even more interested in the news from New Zealand and thinking of you as I'm sure it'll be reclassified soon. I certainly hope so. I know that it'll be an incredible reunion back at a Pot of Courage when you're able to return. Maybe you should even have a hangi.
Yes. I do know a few other New Zealanders back in Ballarat that we probably should do that. I've been involved in one actually back in Ballarat quite a few years ago with a Maori guy there who did the bulk of the work. But yeah, it's a bit of a treat when you're back in New Zealand and you get to be part of that type of feast again as well.
Yeah. Very special. Shiree, it's been absolutely wonderful to speak to you, to hear about the New Zealand side of things and also to learn more about A Pot of Courage and the wonderful work that you and the women involved are doing there. Thank you so much for sharing your story today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thanks for the opportunity.
This is Dirty Linen and I'm Dani Valent. We air the issues that the hospitality industry finds hard to talk about, hearing from different people with unique perspectives. We want to hear from you as well. If you have something that needs to be said about a topic, get in touch so we can include your perspective. Contact us at dirtylinen@deepintheweeds.com.au or hit us up on Insta @Dirty Linen Podcast. We can't wait to hear from you.